Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube Astrological segment, we're going to be talking about transit Venus, sextile, or trine one's natal Chiron. Now, this transit may manifest in love, enjoyment, relationships, money, values, could be in harmony with, well, physical and emotional wounds. You're probably wondering, well, what do I mean by that? Elaborate on that, yes. Well, the thing about it is, it's not that you're going to love or enjoy your physical and emotional wounds, but what it could be is that your relationships that you're in, whether it's a significant other, could be an important friendship. These people may be able to, may be more supportive of these issues at this time, more so than usual. You may have the money available to take care of these problems at this time. Even if you're somebody, say, that is rich and affluent or prosperous, you may always have the money to take care of some debility or some sickness or whatever it might be, an injury. But the thing about this is, you'd be more active to feel like spending the money, or to actually go out and do what you have to do to go to the place to get taken care of and spend the money in the process in order to take care of the issue. I mean, if you have say your natal Chiron is in Sagittarius, and could be something with the hips or the thighs, the sciatic nerve. It could be something with the liver. Some examples. Um, and this is remember, that's also about emotional suffering as well. And it could be, some emotional wounds, whether it was some kind of physical or verbal abuse one may have endured. This is the time where, the relationships, the significant friendships can be there and be more supportive of these matters. Chiron, keep in mind, is the wounded healer. It's about, how we help others, what we do to help others in where we can't help ourselves, and in the ways we help others that we're not able to help ourselves. And the thing is, it's like the person that has, say, their natal Chiron in Virgo may be very adept at organizing and cleaning someone's place, vehicle, whatever it might be. Say if you have the natal Chiron is in Virgo in the third house, it could be somebody that's very proficient at cleaning someone's vehicle, but you might not be able to do it yourself, or you choose not to do it yourself for whatever reason. And the thing about this is, a lot of this, this energy is really where you have, you have more enjoyment in helping and healing others, and there's a good value in this. Remember, you're talking about a good relationship between the transit of Venus and the natal Chiron. So it's a time where you can enjoy helping others more so than usual. Now, Chiron is also means connected with ineptitude and weakness. It could be at least where you feel inept in your own life, where you don't feel adept, or you don't feel, there's some sense of lack. And it could be, if you have your natal Chiron in Taurus, it could be, for example, something monetary, or difficulty in generating your own income. If you have your natal Chiron, say, in Taurus in the 8th house, you might feel where you're inept in staying composed in a crisis situation, or being able to have stability in a shared resources scenario. And it's something where you have to understand this time. This is a time where, again, going back to your relationships, and whether there's significant friendships or a romantic connection, they could be more beneficial in helping you deal with that. It could be also, to keep in mind, Venus is about our self-worth, our self-esteem, and how we feel about ourselves. So it's a time where you're more apt to have that self-worth, taking stock in yourself, to be able to deal with what you feel is inept in your own life at this time. Now, Chiron is also associated with our deepest pain. Like, I have my natal Chiron in Aries in the 12th house. So for me, that deepest pain could be associated with just general, lack of initiative and enterprise, which would be the self-undoing, or it could be not having the courage and fortitude to confront hidden adversaries. As an example, because the Aries, of course, is about confrontation, courage, fortitude. The 12th house is associated with hidden enemies, and this is a time where I can really, when I have this transit, allowing myself to have the self-worth and self-respect to be able to do so. If those things have not been, if there's something I need to take care of, that's in connection with the placement I just described that I have my Chiron placement. And it could even be about really, this time as well, again, going back to relationships, whether they're significant friendships or romantic connections. These people, you know, can be beneficial in those matters, and then also about receiving love, and really not being, lamenting over these wounds at this time, because if you have love in your life, that could at least provide, some alleviation from what you're dealing with as far as your deepest pain, your deepest wound, which of course is connected with Chiron. Now, Chiron, I was just talking about Venus, interestingly enough, being connected with self-esteem. Now, the Chiron is about depleted and diminished self-worth and self-esteem. So I would say, when you have this transit, it could be it's advantageous. It could be for perhaps restoring diminished self-worth at this time. It could be finding a time that's very peaceful. Venus is about peace and tranquility. So when you have the transit Venus being connected with peace and tranquility, it might give you that time to really to figure out what are you going to do about your depleted self-worth or self-esteem. If you have your natal Chiron in the first house, it could be over something of physical nature. It might be your appearance you're just not happy with. It could be where you might be heavier than you want to be. As an example, you're not toned enough, or you don't feel like you've worked out enough to have the body or the physique you want. You might feel self-conscious about your appearance, as some examples. And Chiron is also about the suffering one may go through, and which is really tied into some of the things I've talked about. The emotional wounds and suffering. That's all. I would say that's hand in hand. The suffering, whether it's the physical nature or monetary nature, whatever it might be, it's something where you have to understand. Venus is about love, and you could be loving yourself enough to try to deal with your own suffering and not allow yourself to suffer. If you're suffering, say, for example, if it's coming from someone say the Chiron, your natal Chiron's in the 11th house, for some friend or an acquaintance, for example, had belittled you, done something which caused some emotional suffering, or you were in a relationship that was abusive. This is the time where you may be able to love yourself more and allow yourself to end and at least alleviate some of that suffering. That suffering, unfortunately, depending on how long you had to endure something that resulted in the suffering you're going through, that obviously could take a long time. And one quick transit generally is not going to be the end or the eradication of that suffering. But anyway, now Chiron is also associated with the key. It could be the key to dealing with whatever suffering, emotional, physical wounds you're going through. And it's a time where you could have more value in this, where you could have more enjoyment of saying, okay, I'm going to formulate some plan what I'm going to do about my suffering that I'm enduring at this point in time. And this makes it a very about having it's a very good transit, I would say, for being able to try to take care of those matters at this time. And a lot of it, I think, could start with just having love, and whether it's some from another person or loving oneself, at this time, and this is where I think it could be a very beneficial transit. Hold on a moment, baby. Well, the next thing up, I want to talk about another way this transit could manifest. It could be that relationships, which is Venus, could be in harmony with in the ways which you are helping and healing others, which is Chiron. Now, let's say if you have the natal Chiron and Taurus in the 8th house as an example, it could be being able to help others, and as I talked about before, staying calm, composed, nearly unflappable, which is Taurus in a crisis situation. It could also be about giving stable support to others as well, and it could also be a time too where when you have this transit, it could be auspicious to receive money, which is Venus, could be for physical rules, which is Chiron. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal Chiron is in Capricorn, it could be something with the gallbladder, the joints, the knees, the bones, the hamstrings is some examples, especially if you have your natal Chiron in the 1st or 6th house in your chart, because the 1st house, of course, is associated with the physical body. The 6th house is associated with physical debilities, physical health-related matters. Another thing, too, could also be very positive for having peaceful, which is Venus. It could be interaction with people that may have actually caused suffering to you, which is Chiron. Now, if your natal, let's say for example, if the natal Chiron is in Gemini in the 3rd house, it could be a mischievous, which is Gemini, a neighbor, which is the 3rd house. And it's also, it could be a time where it's easy to love and enjoy, which is Venus, helping and healing others, which is Chiron. If the natal Chiron is in Pisces in the 11th house, it could be helping others deal with betrayal and deception, duplicity, which is Pisces. It could be by a friend, which is the 11th house. This also could be a time for artistic expression, which is Venus, to alleviate suffering to some degree, which is Chiron. If the Chiron, it's a natal Chiron is in Aries in the 12th house, like I talked to you about before in my example, my placement, it could be just some suffering I'm going through just simply by not exhibiting or showing enterprise and initiative, and which is really connected with the self-undoing. It could be impulsiveness, that's a self-undoing, and also too difficulty in having that courage and fortitude, which is Aries, to confront, and that's Aries as well. Hidden adversaries, people that may have been posing as friends but were secretly enemies. Anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.